Americans want their leaders to do something about it. They recognize the pervasive influence that tech has over their lives, whether it's their own privacy or their kids' addiction or national security or rising energy costs, what have you. It's becoming a kitchen table issue for many Americans, and they want governments to do something about it.
This is The Rip Current. I'm Jake Ward. We look at the big invisible forces working on us every day, and every week we interview an expert in those forces. One of the things that I think about a lot is a future in which we begin to regulate, and in some cases sue, on the basis of a whole new bunch of stuff. The idea of suing on the basis of, being manipulated, of losing your agency, of not being able to make good decisions because of for-profit companies working on you all the time. And of course, to do that, you got to put a lot of faith into the political will of elected officials. This week's guest is Sasha Hayworth. She runs something called the Tech Oversight Project, and she is essentially in the business of trying to shape the narrative around tech such that both political leaders, elected officials, get the gist of what needs to happen, and the people covering it in the media also aim their powers at the right kinds of stories. And in her case, she is a really interesting way of seeing whether elected officials are in any way ready to take on the kinds of stuff that I and a lot of other critics would like them to take on. She is talking to me right after the big victory for Democratic candidates in mayoral and governor elections across the country. And she says tech is a big part of why these folks are winning. So we talked this week about the allergic reaction that Americans are having to the influence of big tech in their lives and what elected officials might be able to do about it. I hope you enjoyed this hour-long conversation with Sasha Hayworth. Sasha Hayworth, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So we're speaking Wednesday, November 5th. Yesterday, Tuesday, November 4th, was an election day in governor's races, in mayor's races. New York City has a new governor. Virginia has a new mayor. Virginia has a new governor. I'm curious what your reaction is to those conversations, because I know you think a lot, those results, because I know you think a lot about the lens of tech through the lens of who gets elected and what policies they enact. So what's your reaction to yesterday?
Yeah, huge day for Democrats overall. I think Democrats flipped seats all the way from Mississippi up to Maine, New York City, and then Maine won a big ballot initiative. So great night for Dems. And I think there are a couple of races that I was looking at specifically. One was, of course, Zoran's race in New York City. Another one was Mikey Sherrill running for governor of New Jersey. And then the third was Abby Spanberger running for governor of Virginia. And all of them made cases for standing up to tech in some regard. And by no means would you consider someone like Mikey Sherrill or Abigail Spanberger populists, right? But it's clearly an economic issue for people in Virginia because data centers, which are, of course, funded and developed by big tech companies to fuel AI, have risen people's home energy costs, and it's a huge cost of living argument. Another, I think he was a delegate or a state senator, also flipped a Republican seat, basically fully campaigning against data centers. So that really caught my eye because the tension in the party often is how much can you marry? How much can you marry economic development? So, bringing in a data center to bring jobs and, potentially revitalize a rural or a struggling economy with the fact that these are going to create pollution, that this is going to create pollution, light pollution, noise pollution, and also environmental pollution. They're ugly. They're huge. And what are they for? We don't know. The average person is like, what are these, full of computers? What's going on? But also they're raising people's cost of living. So that was an issue in Virginia. In New Jersey,
Do you think that really made the difference? That's interesting because I haven't, obviously there's a lot of
I
rhetoric
think
around this
it.
stuff. Yeah.
I think, yeah. I don't want to overspeak. I think it made the difference in the state senate or the state delegate race that I'm talking about. I mean, his
Mm,
campaign is John McAuliffe, I believe. His campaign was really fully on data
mm,
centers and wedding his opponent to the influx of them. Abigail Spanberger tread a more moderate line, but she said we have to be able to marry incentives with common sense, environmental review and ensure that, um, I don't want to. I'm paraphrasing, but ensure that the tech companies are are meeting the right standards and not, causing undue harm. Mikey Sherrill had just won uh, the governor's seat in New Jersey, had a whole kids online safety plan on her
mm,
website. She's a current member of Congress. She supported the Kids Online Safety Act. She had numerous editorials in local papers blaming Republicans and Donald Trump um, for basically killing the Kids Online Safety Act last year. She has called to stand up to big tech, and it was a huge part of the debate against her opponent this year. And she again referenced it in her victory speech.
mm.
So was thrilled to see her running on kids online safety, and obviously families responded to that.
Right.
Um,
Now you've been in this game for a long, you've been working you've worked in Congress, you've worked in public policy. Like this has been your lane for a while. Like, I see you graduated from Georgetown with a public policy degree in 2016. Tell us how much that has changed, right? That this rhetoric that we're talking about nerdy stuff like data centers
I
in the
know.
political campaign feels of the moment, right? That feels like a big difference. Is that a big difference from how we used to think about tech in your world?
Absolutely. I mean, when I went to policy school, and I actually started in 2012, and it's only supposed to be a 2-year program, and I went part-time because I started working on the Hill. So it took me 4 years to graduate, and I didn't even think about studying tech policy at that
Hmm.
time, frankly. I didn't
Right.
quite.
This is Arab Spring, Facebook.
Yeah,
This is the
this
sort of the
is
hopeful time
the
of tech.
hopeful time. They were
Hmm.
the darlings, and especially of the Democratic Party. Um, and they were creating really cool stuff, like
Right.
really cool products. I mean, that we still use to this day. Um,
Easier ways of connecting to voters and running a campaign. All of that stuff.
incredibly,
Right.
and raising money. And my radicalization story, if you will,
Yeah.
is I was working at House Majority PAC, which is it's the sort of the independent expenditure arm of the Democratic Party for the House. And I was in charge of about a dozen House races all over the country. And because you're on the independent expenditure side, you can't communicate with with the candidates themselves because of campaign finance laws. And so you're just like an outside bystander kind of watching. And I was seeing the proliferation of misinformation on social media platforms about my candidates, a lot of times fueled by the other side. Now, Facebook had their ad library, and sure, there was some transparency, but it wasn't catching it all. And they
Hmm.
knew that. And it definitely wasn't catching things in other languages. And a lot of my races in Florida, I saw candidates probably lose because they
Hmm.
were
Hmm.
they were subject to a lack of standards. Like we don't have the FC, like we don't have an FCC for social media. Um, if this ad had been run on television, we could have got it pulled down. But
Hmm.
because it was on
Hmm.
social media, nothing we could do. So I
Hmm.
saw all that happen and basically said to myself, what why aren't we doing anything about it as a people, as potentially advocates, which I certainly didn't see myself as one at that point, but then also as a party. um
Hmm.
Also, when I worked on the Hill, I worked as a communications director for a member of Congress in the House, and we were, that they would have periodic contests of let's increase your followers, member, let's reach out to your constituents.
Facebook would do
No,
that.
the caucus, the
Oh, the
leadership.
caucus would do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they would have someone from Facebook come in and address the caucus. And they were like, we're going to have a contest to see who can get the most amount of followers. And however, 2 weeks. And the way that you won was you basically shoved a bunch of money onto the platform, and then you got your account
Lo and
promoted.
behold,
Yeah.
lo and behold, that
And I
would
walked away
work.
and like, so I'm sorry, how is this not just a money grab for the platforms? It was just this really, just really distasteful partnership that I witnessed. And so yeah, so after that, I just I still worked for the party for in some various ways for a few more years, but then more recently was given an opportunity to create the Tech Oversight Project, and so that's where I've been ever since.
So tell me about the remit of the Tech Oversight Project. What are we trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so in shorthand, I say I'm basically I'm just being mean to big tech. Um, and of course, it's much more serious than that. But I think what is different about the Tech Oversight Project is that we're a very small shop, and that means that we don't have resources by design to allocate to writing legislation or developing policy briefs, doing huge events around the country. What we spend our time on doing is attempting to shape the narrative around these issues. So we amplify the great research work that other organizations do, and we sometimes we will meet with members in the state and the federal level, but a lot of the times we're on the phone with reporters all the time. And because I believe that, and this gets to your earlier question about what has changed about the conversation between 2016 and now, tech issues are politics. Tech issues are not just, the beat of, with all due respect, a tech policy reporter, right?
No, I know. This is the conversation that I've had for years
Yeah.
around. And I had a fantastic colleague at NBC, Brandy Zadrozny, who used to just say, your digital life is your real life. And that is exactly correct. Because for years and years and years, people thought, oh, this is the stuff of nerds, or it's the stuff of fantasy. I used to have a debate, not a debate, but I used to have basically like a brief for one of the ways that network news works is you write your script for that night's broadcast or that day's broadcast. It goes to an editor, and that editor is catching all of the material blind and getting your script as a manual for writing the piece. And I see it the same time that our audience sees it for the first time. Like I don't get to see it ahead of time. It's a very fast and trust-laden process. And one of the things, so as a result, you offer guidance to the editor about what visuals should and shouldn't be used. And in my case, I just had this whole thing about don't make it dark typists. That was always our code name for it. No dark typists.
Yeah.
No zeros and ones.
Yes.
No dude in a hoodie at a keyboard.
No hacker.
No hackers. Yeah. If we're talking about law enforcement, or we're talking about crime, and you need something to illustrate it, show sirens on a car. Show handcuffs. Don't be showing digital stuff. Show real world stuff, because this is the stuff of the real world. And increasingly, I think you're absolutely right. That is exactly where we're at.
That's so
think
smart.
Of tech.
Yeah.
Tech is a universal language now. And,
yes.
And it sucks that we've been pigeonholed. That what you think about has been thought of as like this little domain for so long.
And I think that a lot of that behooves a lot of that, and I'm not trying to be conspiratorial about it, but a lot of that is because I think tech companies, namely the CEOs, the executives there, like to keep it in that frame, because it's similar to what the banks did, and during the the mortgage crisis, is they said this is a very difficult issue. This is a very complicated, and we are the experts, and that helped them. Ultimately, when they're hauled before Congress and they get asked like what a telephone is or whatever, and they're like, yes, well, we can fix this. Just shush. So I think that, and then I also think in regards to AI, it's until now, I think, has been kept in either two very, very very idealistic or apocalyptic corners, and AI is either going to um, become the cure for climate change and cancer
Right.
and
Right.
fix all of our ills, or it will, be killer robots, So
Hmm.
and I think that there's truth to both sides, but what we have to what I try to do is just to keep the conversation like on today's real world harms
Right.
and
Right.
on the possibilities of these two other alternatives.
So when you're meeting a reporter for the first time and you're trying to convince that person, you're trying to convince her to think about it the way that you think about it, what's your sort of top three, top five list of short-term immediate concerns that you want people to pay the most attention to?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, a lot of the reporters that we talk to are political reporters. So
Mm,
it's always in the lens of, is there a bill moving its way through
mm.
Congress, or what are the presidential candidates talking about? Um, but I think that there,
That's tough. I would do that would be irritating to me. I would find that hard, right? Because for me, I can't relate to politics as a like I'm not a good. I was always one of my great challenges as a reporter was always dealing with politics as a subject
Mhm.
because invariably my subject takes me there. But I would also sometimes have to like fill in as an anchor at NBC and there'd be a reporter, a political reporter. I have a great friend, Ali Vitali, who's a great political reporter, and she'd come on and talk about something that somebody had said, and I would inevitably say something naive like, "Well, but Ali, do they really believe that? Like, do
yeah,
you, you
oh,
know?"
yeah.
And she'd have that reaction. She'd be like, "What? What do you? Yeah, like I just sort of it's like someone trying to explain sports to me, and I've never watched sports. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I felt always sort of out of my depth. So that's tough. That's a tough way to
I actually,
attack this subject, I would think.
well, I mean, for better or for worse, though, it's kind of the language that I speak, though.
Yeah, you're that person
Yeah,
too. That's right. That's
yeah,
right.
and
That's right.
yeah. So, I mean, do they believe this? Um, I mean, I think,
Like I say, naive. Naive. I had no place in DC. Whenever I'd go visit the DC bureau, they'd always be like, "What's with this guy? What's with this hippie?"
get
That's
back to
right.
your book.
Yeah, really. What are you talking about? Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, no, I think that what 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 is interesting to me is the politics of tech, and I think that
Hmm.
these the CEOs are there's so much to say. And they're making it no secret that their interests and at this moment are power and their own
Right.
interests, their own like economic
Hmm.
interests. I mean, they're donating millions to the inaugural committee. Their settlements are going straight into Trump's pocket, or in some cases, the ballroom.
Hmm.
They are showing up. They are capitulating. Um, they're using their products to kiss ass, basically.
Hmm.
And you could ask the question: do they really believe any of this stuff? I would think
Yeah,
no.
right. I mean, well, so it's interesting. This is a thing I wanted to think about, and take me wherever you want to go with this because I do want to hear your sort of top three concerns
Oh,
here.
right.
But
I
the
forgot.
but the but the I've been watching a lot of clips lately in which somebody, so there's one, for instance, making the rounds right now where Sam Altman, there's this whole world of VC podcasts, which is the place that most of these guys want to show up. They don't tend to do much in the way of conventional media anymore because why would you?
Right.
Why when we can choose a much bigger platform and a much friendlier platform. So in this case, this is um, Sam Altman and Satya Nadella
Hmm.
talking to one of the early VCs that backed OpenAI, and he essentially asks Altman, well, so how are you going to make our money back? Much more politely than that, but he basically says, what's the plan here? In as friendly a way as possible, in
Uh
as friendly a place as possible. And Altman is so clearly irritated
huh.
by this question, by a guy who has literally given him all of this money, right? Got him going. Um, his answer to that question is, well, if you don't want these shares, I've got other people who will buy them. You just let me know, and I'll sell them and we'll give you, we'll sell your shares to somebody else. And, at the same time, like Alex Karp, the head of Palantir, a, big surveillance tech company,
Hmm.
and defense contractor, they just saw their stock price fall, I believe it was yesterday, and the guy behind the Big Short, the famous investor who shorted the stock
Yeah.
market or shorted the mortgage-backed securities
Hmm.
market, shorted. He put in a put order for both Palantir and Nvidia, and then their stock price fell. And Alex Karp was on CNBC yesterday and lost his mind. I mean, he's just so angry. His hands are going. He's just so angry, and he's talking about just sort of the rage he feels that people want to question this clear path to the stars that is coming out. And I just wonder, like, for you, how often have you encountered the raw version of this feeling that they seem to have, which is the short-term stuff, the ugliness in the short term is worth the discomfort because of what's coming. We're going to solve cancer. We're going to go to the stars. All of this stuff is going to be so great. And I wonder, sort of, how often have you had the experience of kind of bumping, encountering that kind of sentiment in the wild?
I would say almost never, because, and that is an indication of I've never met Sam Altman. I've never even been in the same room with him. I'm not even.
They're not booking you on the same podcast, it would seem to me.
No, they're not booking me on the same podcast. And like, that's fine. And they're so disconnected from even the most even the experts among us. And it really does not bode well for the industry that they are so quick to freak out. I mean, there is massive speculation that is uplifting our entire economy right now, and it makes me extremely nervous that this might be a bubble that is about to pop. There are, Scott Galloway has talked about this on one of his podcasts a lot in depth. As I'm sure you know, the sort of circular partnerships that a lot of the AI companies, the big tech companies, the chip companies have. Just another one announced the other day with OpenAI and Amazon Web Services.
Right.
And like, I'm not a markets expert, so take it or leave my opinion. But I know that all of us are exposed to this.
We'll talk more about that exposure and how the political folks that Sasha is in touch with are thinking about it when we come back. Stay with us. You were talking about the exposure of the economy to this, what people are increasingly calling a bubble. And I want to understand, I wonder the degree to which you find that people, that elected officials understand that or care about it. Because one thing that I think is sort of a sacrament in tech circles is the idea that growth and wealth creation in the aggregate is its own reward, basically, is good, right? It's unquestionably good. And when you get into the niggly details of, well, who is financially benefiting, that, we don't want to talk about that quite as much. I wonder for you, like, when you speak to people on the Hill, and in the meetings you have, what do you get the vibe that they understand or think about the distinction between wealth creation overall as a good thing and the uneven way it may get distributed in this new world?
No, I mean, no, I mean, I don't. I think that there's a few things. One is that this bubble, this like overexposure, this potential economic benefits, it's happening so fast that I don't think a lot of politicians are tracking it. I think that they know there are they know that there's giant tech companies and they're very powerful and they get invited to places and they contribute to campaigns. They're also
Right. So just so I understand, because again, this is like, it's like for me talking about extraterrestrials, because I do not understand
okay.
the way that these minds work. So let's say that they see, for instance, the headline the other day that NVIDIA, an American company, has reached a $5 trillion valuation, the first company in the history of companies to be that valuable. Do you think that their first reaction is good, like great, fantastic, an American company has set this record, go America? Like, what do you think their reaction
Yeah.
is to news
Yeah,
like
I
that?
do. Yeah, I
Yeah.
do. And I don't look like, I'm not anti-capitalist. I'm not like anti-corporate.
Hmm.
I don't think it's necessarily bad that these companies are successful. I think what the problem is with, they're monopolies, and there are many concerns. Tech Oversight Project was founded, and the very first thing we did was jump right into the fight of the antitrust reform. So Senator Klobuchar and Senator Grassley were trying to pass this landmark package of antitrust reform bills that would end various things that, each of these tech companies were doing, still do because it didn't become law. And they hated it. They hated it. They spent like $250 million in one legislative session against it and defeated it. And through that work, it's clear that the way that these companies exist is that they made their success off of an open internet and then slammed the door and pulled up the ladder behind them.
Hmm.
There is no room for innovation for a startup these days. The goal of a startup is often to be acquired by a big tech company, and that's how you make it big. And then you go on and you do your next startup. So I think that a lot of politicians are awakening to the fact that monopolies are not great. It prevents competition on the world stage. One of the reasons why the AI speculation has accelerated so quickly is because, if anyone remembers, like, was it just a year ago that Chinese the Chinese company DeepSeek, or that's the product maybe,
Right.
was created like on the cheap. And meanwhile, American companies were saying, oh, we need to raise all this money to develop the same thing. And China was just like, well, actually, we can do this a lot cheaper. And that's because, there's many reasons, cheap labor being chief among them. But that for a lot of us exposed the fact that these companies are too big to be nimble right now. So I think that a lot of politicians recognize that. I think that more and more issues, local issues like data centers, and how data centers, which are of course fueled by big tech's AI development and the chasing of AGI, are as becoming an inflationary issue for people's constituents. And when their constituents start writing in, calling in, or protesting in many cases locally against something, that's when politicians wake up and
Yeah.
listen.
I think if I were to, if I wanted to like play a clip for anybody thinking about the kind of the future vision of this stuff, I would want to play, there's a January 2024 interview with Sam Altman. And I end up, this is the tough thing, is that like he's been the most out there and vocal, and so he gets sort of the most grief as a result. But he says pretty nutso stuff, and one of the nutso things he said was to Alexis Ohanian on his podcast. He said in January 2024 that he has a bet going with his other tech CEO friends on WhatsApp as to which financial quarter will see the first billion-dollar one-person company. And what I would want to explain right to an elected official is like, do you know what happens in your world, like in your, to your constituents when that starts to happen, right? Like, I don't care how big a house that billionaire buys. Your constituents don't all get jobs as
Right.
gardeners, like that's it, that's the game. The other one that jumps out at me, Dario Amodei, the founder of Anthropic, co-founder, he has this line about how he basically told Axios this thing about how you should be very concerned about what we are building. He's quite frank about this. You should be very concerned about what we are building because we may have the cure for cancer and we may generate huge wealth and there will be 20% unemployment, And it's that kind of thing where I feel like I just want to give elected officials a crash course just in that,
Mhm.
And in a moment we'll talk about the sort of the content of the brain and how the brain is being affected, how people's behavior is being affected, and whether you think elected officials would think about that. But at the very least, I'd just like to say to these folks, here's the future vision. It is not for everyone. It is for a very small percentage of people get the most benefit
Yeah,
of that. And how do you feel about that, Senator?
right. And I think that to work in politics is to be very, very happy with short-term outcomes.
Yeah, right,
And
right.
I think that what you're describing is so far is on a horizon so far that if it's difficult for you and me to contemplate that, it's very difficult for, I think, a politician that can complicate that to contemplate that. An example again, data centers. There are people who are making the case against data centers. There's there might be like 1,500 jobs that are brought in to construct the building. Then after
Right.
those jobs go away, it's like one security guard forever. And
And is even that too far out for someone to think
yeah,
about
well, because they say,
the
I
damage?
don't care, bring me the 1,500 jobs now. And look, like,
Right, because that'll happen during my
exactly,
term.
but also, I mean, like maybe, and that's not to say that there aren't 1,500 people that could use a good job, right? Tomorrow, and they'd be happy for that, and then they
Sure.
can find another. Like, that's not to say that there aren't good intentions behind it, but when a municipality, when a city is offering tax incentives for for the largest companies in the history of the world to come and bring those purported jobs, first of all, they better actually put their money where their mouth is and deliver those jobs, and they don't actually do that. And second of all, it's often behind the scenes. There's NDAs signed. It's never like, oh, Amazon data center is coming. It's like some LLC and there aren't opportunities for the public themselves to protest against or to stand up against it.
Right. When we come back, we'll talk about the even more abstract concern about AI and its effect on young people, our brains, our connections with one another, and whether there's any political solution to that at all. We'll be right back. Stay with us. I'm wondering what you think about the way in which, like, what will get through to an elected official when it comes to the sort of more namby-pamby stuff that I care about, which is the effect that these technologies are having on our behavior, on our connections with one another. I'm thinking about, like, one example I use all the time when it comes to sort of like people coming together over a real problem that maybe doesn't show up in the numbers, but is clearly unacceptable in a modern society. And the one that I bump into, that I come back to all the time, is one that was part of a documentary that I worked on called Hacking Your Mind. And in it, we talked about how prior to 2013, a small but statistically significant number of kids were dying every year of this one particular cause. And it was like 60 to 100, sometimes 60 to 200, depending on the year. It was a small number compared to like all these other forms of death, accidental death that we see. But it was kids being run over in their own driveway, typically backed over by their parents,
God.
right? And it was because we didn't have backup cameras in cars, right? And then the research clearly showed that backup cameras would solve that problem. And a bipartisan effort came together, and boom, as of 2013, you cannot buy a new car in this country. If a car is manufactured after 2013, it's got to have a backup camera in it, right? And that's new money that you got to spend on the car. That's new money that the company, has to put into, procuring all this stuff. But to my mind, that, like, I've always used that as the example of, like, we can sense a thing against all, like, mathematical logic, because that number of kids just wouldn't matter in theory if you were talking about, like, some other form of injury. But we could solve it, And I wonder, like, for you, are kids, I mean, you mentioned the Child Online Safety Act. Are kids something that you think people can come together over, in spite of the fact that it may not be a problem they can solve during their own term? It's not like job creation or anything else that is a short-term solution. Like, is kids that, and is there appetite, do you think, to think about beyond that, like what I worry about, which is like, will we be able to connect with one another when everyone's just in love with their own
Yeah.
chatbot? Will we ever believe video evidence again now that we're going to be awash in AI slop? Like, for you, like, how out there can these issues be and still get through to an elected
Yeah.
official?
This is something I literally wake up every day thinking about. I have two kids,
Hmm.
3 and 6, and they are, I mean, the draw of the phone and the screens is so apparent. And it's, you take a toy away from a kid and they're mad about it. But when I tell one of my kids that they can't watch TV anymore, they freak out. And
Yeah, they
it
go all the
is
way.
it is shocking how effective screens are. And I think that that is to say that it's an issue that all of America can understand. Um, that being the addictive nature of screens, and particularly social media or chatbots, which we can talk about too. And for politicians, they can understand that too. That's why
Hmm.
parent advocates have been so effective. Um, they talk about the effect that a meeting, an in-person meeting, has. Last year, when parents were meeting with senators to try to get them to co-sponsor the Kids Online Safety Act, which essentially would have compelled social media companies to design their products safely. What a concept.
Hmm.
If a senator was a holdout, they would request an in-person meeting with the parents, and parents would go around, because I think that the narrative, especially coming from tech, is parents should be better parents. Parents should be better in
Right.
control.
Right.
There are parental controls. Tech companies have instituted them. They implement new ones all the
Hmm.
time because the old ones don't work. You know,
Also, the totally invented idea that somehow kids should be responsible for themselves once they're older than
oh, right,
13, which is also another one that I'm just like, whoa,
right.
whoa,
You can
what?
have access to the entire internet and everything that's on it, but you can't smoke a cigarette. Um,
Right, right, right.
so, what would happen in these meetings is that the parents would go around and share stories about how they did everything right, how they had the difficult
Hmm.
conversations about someone might approach you online. Here's what to do. Don't send nude photos. They would talk about what they would do, what the kids should do if they start feeling upset or vulnerable or cyberbullied. They would implement time, limits. They would put, like, Instagram's parental controls on like the highest setting. And some of these kids still died. And
Hmm. Hmm.
there's no amount of parental oversight that can stand up to the weight of these algorithms that are designed
Hmm.
to show you not only the most, obviously they're designed to keep you on the platform, so they're designed to be addictive. They show you what they think that you like, but also they show you what they think you as a 13-year-old girl would react to the most. So it's not about what you want. It's not about like making you feel happy. It's about getting your eyeballs to stick to a thing.
Right. The technical term in the early days of Facebook for that was revealed
Mm,
preferences. And that's your what you could never answer in a
correct.
survey that you'd be into that thing. But clearly your preferences as revealed by the
Well,
algorithm
yeah,
are
and they
that.
hired neuroscience to determine how best to do that.
Right. Right, right. The best and brightest of
Yeah.
behavioral science, that's right, have gone to work for these companies at
Yeah,
some
so I
point. That's
think
right.
parent advocates are the most effective advocates. Once they
Hmm.
had meetings with senators, that senator would get on the bill. And you
Hmm.
see it,
Hmm.
they're passing kids online safety legislation or cell phone bans or, things of that ilk all over the country now. Um, and parents have a lot to do with that.
On a
Mhm.
bipartisan basis, you think it's even that they can come over? That's they can,
The latest version of the Kids Online Safety Act is now has been reintroduced in the Senate and has over 60 co-sponsors. It's filibuster proof. And there's
Hmm,
you show me another bill that has the support of 2/3 of the Senate. Like, it doesn't happen.
right.
Doesn't happen.
That's nice. I like the idea that at least, at the base of our spinal column, there is a common set of
One would hope.
values
One would hope.
that, yeah, one would hope, at least for the moment, right? I mean, this is the difficulty, right? Is that, and this is where I get into the difficulty with chatbots and the rest of it, is that I don't think it's been fully revealed yet to uh, political, to elected officials, just how useful that technology is going to wind up being as they try to craft their public image and try and damage other people's public image. Like, I don't know, like, it feels to me like part of there was all of this concern around social media and then it suddenly got turned into, well, they're censoring conservative voices.
Right.
It became a matter of political strategy rather than just an abstract concern for the welfare of kids or whatever it is. And I worry that AI chatbots are not the people just don't know enough about them yet to understand what might be there for them in how they talk
Well,
about
and
them and try and regulate them.
I think that people are learning very, very quickly because of the lawsuits. I know personally a number of lawyers who are representing families who have lost kids due to online harms. And I think that there is an epidemic coming in this country of lonely kids who turn to a chatbot for companionship, and that chatbot ends up appealing to that child's worst instincts. And it has already resulted in many suicides. Because, I mean, I've seen some of these chat logs which have been released with some of the lawsuits. It is horrific. These kids are turning to what they think is, I mean, I think that they know that it's not a human, but they're still kids, they're like, should I call my mom? And the chatbot's like, and I'm not quoting from anyone now. I'm just, as an, sort of paraphrased example. Should I call my mom? I'm feeling really sad. No, you stick it out alone. You're strong. You're independent. Like, your mom will never understand you like I will. And where I think we're headed towards a reckoning, because this is a product that tech companies have developed. It's not, a forum. It's not the public forum where I post my opinion. This is an algorithm. This is like the statistical probability model that spews out words that they have designed. It's a product, and it's causing death.
This is the thing. Like, there's real, like, I mean, this is the thing. Like, so OpenAI just last week put out these stats around the amount of psychotic behavior they're seeing in the chats, the amount of suicidal intention that is indicated in the chats. And those numbers are very small as a percentage of the total, as you would imagine, right? 0.15% of users are actually indicating that they might actively be thinking about suicide. And that is, and that is a lower number than the national average on an annual basis, which is like 0.6%. And so it puts me in this mind of like, what is the sort of gap between the responsibility, like, is this just, what you hear a lot of tech people say is like, we are just a reflection of society. And so we can't be held responsible for society's difficulties. We're just, a neutral platform on which society's natural stuff just sort of comes out, right? There's criminality in the world. There's going to be criminality online. I wonder what you think of that argument.
I mean, no, they're not. Like, I just don't, like, no, they're not. maybe at one point they were, um, but what the second they decided to curate the feed, the second they decided to decide what you see, is when, in my opinion, they stop becoming, the public forum. That is just simply a reflection. They run ads. They make money off of us being online.
Right. Social
Yeah.
media companies. This is
So
their
their business
model.
model,
Right,
they're
right,
ad
right.
companies. Like, this is their model.
Mhm.
And and the reason why they changed the algorithm is it would develop the algorithm in the first place is because they weren't making money off of our boring posts about, what we ate for dinner. It's much more lucrative to be able to promote the post from the neo-Nazi or whatever and get a bunch of engagement on it.
And so do you think the same dynamic will be at work with
I think a
something like
chatbot is
Right? In
different
this case,
too,
we're
because
talking
there's
about
no human at the bottom of it. It's not a free speech argument. They've developed this product. It's squarely at the
Right.
feet of the companies.
They OpenAI put out a product sort of update this week in which they described a shift in strategy where they're going to be more about among many things they described, they're going to be about more empowering users, letting adults be adults,
Porn.
and thinking of the
Yeah.
chat. Well, that's
Porn.
right. Porn,
Yeah.
right, is a thing. Porn is, yeah, exactly. And that it'll be more of an emotional companion than just a productivity tool. At the same time, they also are trying to say, are saying that we have 170 mental health experts who work on lessening the incidence of a chatbot saying the wrong thing when somebody indicates that they might commit suicide. But there's the mixed incentives there are really
Yeah.
complicated, because are really,
I
they're
mean, these
mixed.
products,
Very
they're
mixed,
not
it seems.
safe. They're not safe. I mean, you said, I don't know how many kids were killed when their parents ran over them, but one death is too many. I think Senator Klobuchar,
Right.
or she had a landmark bill with a pool drain in like the 90s where a child's arm was caught in the pool drain, and then, or like a garage door didn't have a sensor for one child to get struck by a garage door, and there's legislation. I mean, how can you
Right, by the logic of software of that, that's an
right.
edge case, and as long as that edge case is a really tiny percentage of the total, and the overall benefit to the rest of humanity is great enough, then
We're talking
that's an
about children.
acceptable
We're talking about
number
children.
of
I mean,
glitches.
we don't put
Right.
toys out on the market if they have lead, if they kill kids. And that's the whole point of the one of the chatbot bills that was not signed into law in California this year, 1064, was that if you can't prove that your product is safe, children should not be using it. That should be the bare minimum for something like chatbots. They have not proven. They can release, as many statistics as they want about the prevalence of psychosis. They can hire as many mental health experts. That's great. Keep doing that. But until your product is proven to be safe for children, like every playground that we as parents put our kids on every day, you shouldn't have kids using it. And the safeguards are so easily circumvented, Jake. It's like, oh, please don't talk about suicide. You should really reach out to someone else. And they're like, oh, it's for like a book report. They're like, got it. Keep going. Let me show you how to tie the noose.
When we come back, we'll talk about the final frontier of this stuff, which is Section 230, a big topic that we have in common that we've both been thinking about a long time. We'll talk through what the future of neutrality and the legal protection around neutrality might be on the internet, or whether that needs to change. Stay with us. For anyone who doesn't know, right, so Section 230 is a portion of the Telecommunications Act, which was signed into law when Bill Clinton was president, that essentially says that people who make platforms, social media platforms, and now people who make chatbots, I assume they fall under the same heading here, but basically the whole idea in the United States is, if I put something crazy on social media, that social media company is not responsible for it. They are they are protected against legal liability for the crazy stuff that I might say on that platform, up to a point, but for the most part, they're protected. And it's really the basis of the modern internet, is what people argue, that the whole point of it is you can say whatever you want, and that's the it creates the marketplace of ideas that we have enjoyed. What's your opinion on Section 230? It divides people in my world very strongly, and I wonder what you think about that legal
I
protection.
think that it needs an update. I think that it's something that is essentially akin to, like, talking about the politics of it. It's akin to like Social Security. It's a third rail. If you touch it, everyone Republicans, like everyone retreats to their partisan corners.
Why is that? Tell me more about
because, well, this is a little bit more true during the Biden administration, but Republicans were very skillfully created an issue of conservative censorship. That the Biden administration, strong arm jawboned them into removing misinformation about vaccines or the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're also shadow banning, right-wing accounts and deplatforming. Just the idea that these companies were using it to censor. And now, now I think that Democrats have a very strong argument on the same in the same stance. As far as Section 230, when you bring it up in a discussion about legislation or on the Hill, it's almost like it'll never happen. It'll just be a red herring that creates fight, just creates unnecessary fighting, and we might as well just not touch it and work on sort of incremental change or changes to the platform itself and like the way that they've designed their products, which is where you get something like the Kids Online Safety Act.
So it's more about the utility of Section 230 to each side as a political lever than it is about any kind of abstract, good faith debate about its
I would
merits.
say that's true. Yeah.
That's too bad. And again, I'm such a naive.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's like I'm just like, oh.
Yeah. I mean,
man,
I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about, you can't, if you want to go and say, like, this person was interested in like repealing Section 230. Like, if you want to go, if you want to make it a thing, if you like really want to try, you can't, you have to be in for a penny, in for a pound. You can't just tack it on to the end of a platform framework. Right. You have to make it your thing. It has to be extremely well financed. You have to get stakeholders on the right and left and make it like a national campaign. And that is because there's no momentum. There's no political momentum behind repealing it. Now, I do think that the tech companies are in a bit of hot water when it comes to chatbots, like I said, because Section 230 is the legal shield behind which they hide for all of our crazy posts on social media. But like I said earlier, chatbots are not our crazy posts on social media. We're prompting it, but the outputs are all theirs. So that's where these.
So you could argue in theory this is publishing.
I think
this
so.
Is not just curation. This isn't even right. It's not even curation. This is you have created a right. It's publishing.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
And look, and again, like I'm not a lawyer. You should really get one of those on here to talk about this. But the lawsuits against OpenAI, against Character AI, against Meta, all of that come down to, is this product, is this thing a product, and not the output of like various humans being humans on the internet, So I think that, and also, we haven't talked about this yet, but there are two landmark court cases coming next year. One is the state case against Instagram, Meta, Snap, I think that's it. And Google, I think. Yeah, YouTube. And then the other is the multi-district lawsuit against Meta itself. And those are all kids' online safety cases. Zuckerberg and Mosseri, they're compelled to testify in the first one I mentioned. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunity to ask these people what, they're going to be on the stand. And they're going to have to be under oath testifying as to what exactly their incentives were in creating these products and how they're thinking about and how they brought them to market.
Right. I have said for a long time that I'm excited for that. I'm excited for 2026, just as a journalist, mostly just for the discovery.
Yes.
Like, I just want to know more about the internal processes by which this stuff works. Because in my reporting experience, right, when I have looked at people who have gotten ensnared, for instance, in, these pay-to-play casino simulators, you fake, it's like a fake roulette experience or fake blackjack experience that you have to pay money to play, but you can't win any real money back. It's a definition of a loser's game. And there are thousands of people across the country losing their life savings to these games. And it's through Facebook that these companies find the most susceptible players who they consider whales. And in the open discussion of this marketing and all of this, you can see in even some public appearances, the Facebook people who are in charge of this stuff saying, well, here's how you do it. And you can make a whale, or you can bleed them dry slowly. Like, they have a whole system. And to my mind, it reminds me when I was the editor-in-chief of Popular Science magazine, my very brilliant online director came to me one day and was like, we have a big problem. There are people flooding our comments with misinformation. And so, that contradict the scientific findings in some cases of like really important stuff around like STDs and so forth. And so we're like becoming this like cesspool of misinformation. And I was like, oh, what do you think we should do? And she was like, we should turn that stuff off, turn those comments off. And I was like, oh, good idea. And so we did. We turned them off.
Yeah.
And I got in huge trouble, as you can imagine. My bosses were like, what are you doing? You've cost us all of this engagement. And I then got called on to like NPR and PBS and CBS and all these places to defend this decision. They were like, aren't you stifling free speech? Isn't the whole point of science that you're supposed to have free speech? And I said, well, we don't have, we have a responsibility to make sure that our readership is getting accurate information.
Yeah.
Right? If you can imagine that. And I said, and so what we need to do, this is how naive I was in like 2012. I was like, we need to put it on a platform that has the resources to do a good job of that. And that's Twitter and Facebook. And little did I know that those folks don't care at all. That the whole point that, and when they get sued, they say it is an existential threat to our business if we were to be held responsible for what people post there. And as a publisher, I cannot relate to that attitude, and it makes me realize how different that world.
One thing you said earlier about sort of the manipulation of our brains brought to mind an anecdote from one of the latest Meta whistleblowers. Meta has had a lot of whistleblowers. I wonder what it is about that company that prompts so many people to have to speak out against them. And she said she was talking about behavioral advertising and how Facebook had always claimed that they didn't engage in it. Of course, what they did do is they outsourced it to a third party, so the third party is engaging in it. What happens is that if a child or a teen or anyone posts a selfie and they've seen that the selfie does not get the engagement from their friends that they wished that it had, they pull it down. That sends a signal to the advertisers. That actually sends a signal to Facebook that kid is feeling ugly, vulnerable, susceptible to something. And then they ping the advertisers. The advertiser sends them a beauty product. And
right. This was part of a presentation in Australia that was showing potential advertisers what could be possible as we can get kids
100%.
Most vulnerable.
And I think about that as now what they're going to be showing, now what they're going to be marketing are the chatbots. hey, I noticed that you
Mhm.
you pulled down that selfie. Are you feeling okay? Are you, what's up? They're marketing themselves as,
And that would be the best possible
yeah,
version of
but
how
like
they
they're
might
marketing
act on
themselves as
that.
like
That's right.
mental health practitioners, when it's really just marketing. Because,
Or at the very least, there may be a little. I mean, the thing about these companies is they're so vast. Is there's probably a couple of people in one corner of the company who
of
believe they
course,
are
yeah,
doing
yeah,
good
yeah,
mental health work and are trying to do that, and then there's the other crew on the other side of the campus whose job it is to keep engagement
of
numbers high.
course.
And then the question is who wins out in the end, and then that's typically where a whistleblower comes from, in my
Right. And
experience.
I think we know who wins out in the end. It's profits at the end of the
Mhm.
day. I mean, I think that there are many good people and many brilliant people who work in these companies, and I'm sure they are horrified by what their bosses are doing politically right now. And so I would not be surprised if there are more whistleblowers that that come out of this era.
Hmm. So to close up here, it sounds to me like you are, at least coming off of yesterday's
Mm.
election news, it sounds to me like you are finding that there really is traction politically for candidates in pushing back against what tech has in mind. And it also sounds to me like you've at least noticed some places in which people on both sides of the aisle can come together over a shared abstract concern about big tech's effect on at least kids. So would you say you are like, are you optimistic? Is there traction here for coming to a healthier place with
I'm
big
definitely
tech?
optimistic. I think that there is there is a lot of bipartisan effort to hold tech accountable. I think you have, I mean, never in a million years would I think that someone like, Josh Hawley, who is like so conservative and so I disagree with him on like 99.9% of things, but he's been railing against kid tech monopolies. He has been standing up to them on kids online safety. He was right there when they wanted to make their own um like cryptocurrency. He's like, why the hell would I want a tech company also charging me to use their own currency? Like, what the hell kind of world is that? So he's great. And then you also have champions. I mean, like Elizabeth Warren has been talking about this for a very long time. And you have senators like Richard Blumenthal who partner with other conservative senators like Marsha Blackburn to create kids online safety legislation. So I think that like as it exists in the Senate, I am hopeful. Also, of course, the like Congress being Congress, no one's ever no one's ever lost a bet when they've bet on Congress not doing anything. So there's that bit of cynicism, but I think as you said, the elections yesterday proved that candidates that stand up to big tech appeal to voters. Voters like that. We've done many national and state polls, and as of other groups have done many surveys that show that Americans want their leaders to do something about it. They recognize the pervasive influence that tech has over their lives, whether it's their own privacy or their kids' addiction or national security or rising like energy costs, like what have you. It's becoming a kitchen table issue for many Americans, and they want governments to do something about it.
The Rip Current is produced and created by me, Jacob Ward. And if you liked this show and you want more content like this, go to theripcurrent.com, where I publish a weekly newsletter that covers these same sorts of stories of the big invisible forces that have us all in their grip. And if you want to really do me a favor, if you could go to where you have listened to this or watched it and like it, share it, or even better, review it. Holy cow, is that helpful? It's the best possible way for me to find a new audience. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening.